My wife flirted with her ex behind my back and called marriage a prison, so I froze our accounts and watched her perfect life implode overnight. I'm a 34-year-old male, and up until last year, I was a senior project manager at one of those corporate tech firms that work you to death, but paid just enough to keep you from quitting. I had been there for almost a decade. Not what I dreamed of doing when I was younger. I wanted to start my own gaming company, but it paid a $110,000 a year plus bonuses, which my now ex-wife, Sarah, a 32-year-old female, made sure disappeared almost immediately every month. We met at my buddy Dave's wedding 7 years ago. She was the maid of honor, stunning, confident, and smart-mouthed in a way that made you want to impress her. Back then, she worked as a marketing consultant, mostly posting on Instagram for local boutiques that barely paid her bills. I was making about $85,000 then and had just bought my first condo. Looking back, that's probably what attracted her more than anything else. The first 2 years were decent. Not perfect, but decent. She complained about her job, how her feminist studies degree wasn't being respected in the corporate world, and how the patriarchy was keeping her from her dream job. Meanwhile, I was grinding 60 to 70-hour weeks, taking on extra projects and working weekends to save for the house she insisted we needed in the right neighborhood. She had this way of making me feel like I was never doing enough. If I got a 5% raise, she'd ask why it wasn't 8%. If I brought home flowers, she'd point out her friend's husband who surprised his wife with weekend trips. Always comparing, always wanting more. We got married after dating for 18 months. Her parents paid for a small wedding, though I later found out my $15,000 contribution covered most of it while her parents just took credit. She insisted on a prenup ironically. Her parents had given her a trust fund worth about $30,000 that would mature when she turned 35, and she wanted to protect it. Being the naive idiot I was, I agreed and even paid for the lawyer to draft it. You know where this is going. The problem started when I got her name on the mortgage of our $575,000 house in the suburbs. I put down a $110,000 from selling my condo and savings. She contributed exactly $0, but insisted both our names be on everything. That's what marriage is, she said. What's yours is mine. What's mine is mine. She joked to her friends. I should have seen the red flags. Our house was just like her. High maintenance and constantly demanding attention. Within months of moving in, she decided the perfectly functional kitchen needed a renovation, $40,000. 6 months later, it was the master bathroom that was embarrassing, $25,000. I worked extra hours, took on side consulting gigs, and postponed vacations just to keep up with her vision of how we should live. My parents noticed the changes in me. My dad pulled me aside during a rare visit. Sarah always had scheduling conflicts when I wanted to see my family and asked if I was happy. I brushed it off, told him I was just tired from work. But the truth was I was exhausted from walking on eggshells in my own home. Everything had to be her way. The furniture, the vacations, even which friends we could see. My college buddies were immature. My work colleagues were boring corporate drones, and my family lived too far away to bother with regular visits. Meanwhile, her friends were amazing, inspiring boss babes who deserved weekly dinners at expensive restaurants. Her family needed regular visits and gifts. Her dreams deserved unconditional support, financial and otherwise. By year 3, she quit her marketing job to find herself. This involved a series of expensive hobbies and potential career paths that changed every few months. There was the pottery phase, $2,500 in equipment, the amateur photography business, $4,200 for a camera, and lenses, the interior design course, $3,800 in tuition, and finally, the wellness influencer brand that became her identity. Fast forward to last June, I'd gotten promoted to senior project manager overseeing a team of 12 people and a portfolio worth about $25 million to the company. This meant more stress, more hours, but also a nice bump to a $128,000 plus quarterly performance bonuses. Sarah had by then cycled through 4 different jobs, none lasting more than 8 months. Currently, she was between opportunities, her 3rd time unemployed in our marriage, but it started a wellness lifestyle brand on Instagram that had roughly 1,200 followers and made maybe $200 a month in affiliate commissions. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5:30 to get in a quick workout before starting work by 7. She'd sleep until 9 or 10, then spend hours on her phone, engaging with her community or creating content, which mostly involved taking selfies with products she'd convinced me to buy. While I ate sad desk lunches during back-to-back meetings, she'd post elaborate meals with captions about nourishing her body and rejecting toxic hustle culture. My boss, Kevin, invited the management team and spouses to his lake house for a weekend, a nice place about 2 hours from the city. I'd been killing myself on a major project, pulling 80-hour weeks for almost 3 months, and this was supposed to be a celebration. Sarah complained the entire drive up. The car was too cramped. It's a BMW 5 Series. The weather was too hot. The playlist I chose was basic. I kept reminding myself that this weekend was important for my career. Be pleasant. Make a good impression. Don't let her ruin this. She perked up when we arrived. Kevin's house was impressive. Lakefront property with a dock, 5 bedrooms, high-end everything. Sarah immediately latched onto Kevin's wife Lisa and their friend Amber, a 29-year-old female, the wife of another manager. Within an hour, they were talking like old friends, with Sarah dropping casual mentions of luxury brands and wellness retreats like they were everyday topics in our household. I was grabbing drinks for Sarah and Amber when I overheard them talking on the deck. "God, I don't know how you do it," Amber said. "Kyle seems so intense about work." Sarah laughed. That condescending laugh I'd grown to hate. "This marriage feels like a prison sometimes. I swear I can't breathe with him constantly checking our bank accounts and questioning every purchase." Amber lowered her voice. "But he makes good money, right?" "Yeah, but what's the point? He's so damn cheap. Do you know he actually suggested I get a real job last month instead of supporting my brand? Like, sorry, I'm not selling my soul to some corporate master like you did, Kyle." She mockingly raised her voice at the end, not realizing I was right behind her. "He's so basic. My ex Jules would have supported my dreams, but he's in San Francisco now, killing it at his startup. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd moved with him instead." I stood there frozen, 2 sodas in my hands. As my wife of 5 years reduced our entire relationship to a prison sentence, she was serving for financial security. 5 years of sacrificing everything. My free time, my health. I gained 30 pounds from stress eating, my friendships, my dreams, all for her to laugh about it with someone she'd known for all of 3 months. The worst part, this wasn't even the first time. 3 months earlier, she'd made a similar comment during brunch with her cousin. "Marriage is like voluntarily putting yourself under house arrest, but with better food," she'd said, laughing while I sat right there. 6 months before that, when I'd suggested starting a family, she'd visibly cringed and said, "Let's not add more bars to the cage, babe." I don't remember much after that. I somehow made it through the weekend smiling and pretending everything was fine, but inside something had fundamentally broken. In that moment, standing on that expensive deck with fancy imported sodas warming in my hands, I decided if this marriage was her prison, I'd set her free. But she'd learned that freedom comes with a price. On the drive home, Sarah complained about everything. How Kevin's wife, Lisa, had been showing off with her newly renovated kitchen. How the bed sheets at the lake house weren't high enough thread count. How embarrassing it was that I only got a 3% raise when Kevin had mentioned others getting 5%. "We really need to talk about your career trajectory," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Kevin mentioned that director position opening up next year. That should be at least a $170,000, right? We could finally renovate the backyard. I've been thinking about one of those natural swimming pools." I nodded and made the right noises while my mind raced. The prenup she'd insisted on protected her future trust fund, but it also protected my retirement accounts and any assets I'd brought into the marriage. What it didn't cover was everything else, which, thanks to living in a community property state, meant she'd be entitled to half of our joint assets. But what if there were no joint assets? Monday morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years while Sarah was at a business brunch with her Instagram friends charging a $120 to our joint credit card. I made 2 important calls. First to Tyler, my old college roommate who happened to be a divorce attorney, then to my bank. "Kyle, buddy, long time no talk." Tyler's familiar voice brought a small comfort. We drifted apart after my marriage. Sarah thought he was a bad influence because he was single and enjoyed his freedom. "I need your help, Ty, professionally." I outlined the situation. There was a long pause. "And I'm sorry, but you came to the right guy. Her prenup actually works in your favor. She can't touch your 401k or the down payment you made on the house, but we need to document everything else carefully." Tyler advised me to keep acting normal while gathering evidence. Don't confront her, don't change your behavior, and most importantly, don't move money around suspiciously. Courts hate that. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I started gathering records, every contribution I'd made to our joint expenses, every major purchase, and most importantly, every derogatory comment Sarah had made about our marriage on social media. Screenshots of her flirty exchanges with her ex, Jules, who apparently had been more present in her digital life than I'd realized. Evidence of the 4 designer purses she'd bought last month while telling me we needed to cut back on expenses. For the next 6 weeks, I lived a double life. On the surface, nothing changed. I still worked long hours, still acknowledged her complaints with practice patience, still funded her brand collaborations that mysteriously required new outfits and salon visits. But behind the scenes, I executed my exit strategy with the same precision I used for my project management work. Phase 1, Financial Separation. I redirected my next paycheck to my new account, leaving just enough in our joint account to avoid suspicion. I calculated exactly how much I contributed to the mortgage and household expenses monthly, $4,650 on average, and kept depositing exactly that amount. Phase 2, Documenting her behavior. I set up a small recording device in our living room, legal in my state as long as one party knows about the recording. It captured gems like her 1-hour phone conversation with Amber about how settling for stability over passion was slowly killing her soul and how Kyle wouldn't even know what to do with a real woman's needs. Phase 3, Securing Allies. I reconnected with friends she'd pushed away, including Dave, whose wedding we'd met at, and his wife, Megan. Turns out Sarah had tried to convince Megan that Dave was cheating on her last year, a weird power play that backfired when Dave found out. They'd been waiting for me to wake up and see Sarah for who she really was. "She told me you guys were having problems," David admitted during our first lunch in over a year. "Said you were controlling and jealous, but it never matched what I knew about you, man." Megan nodded. She tried to show me evidence that Dave was cheating. A receipt from a jewelry store that wasn't for me. Turned out it was for his mom's birthday. Sarah acted disappointed when I told her like she wanted our marriage to fail too. The most damning evidence came unexpectedly through Lisa, Kevin's wife. She forwarded me an email Sarah had accidentally sent to her instead of Amber detailing her exit plan. "Wait until I got the director promotion. I was in line for next year. Then divorce me once my salary hit at least $175,000. The email included details about a side business account I knew nothing about and her communications with a divorce attorney who specialized in maximizing settlements for women trapped in financial abuse. I forwarded everything to Tyler. His response was immediate. "Holy dude. This is better than anything we could have hoped for." During those weeks of gathering evidence, I also discovered Sarah had been lying about her activities almost daily. Her networking lunches were actually shopping sprees. Her business conference in San Diego had mysteriously been at the same hotel where her ex, Jules, was speaking. She'd even borrowed $3,000 from our emergency fund for a medical procedure that turned out to be cosmetic fillers and Botox. The final straw was finding credit card statements showing she'd been making regular payments on a separate card I knew nothing about, over $12,000 in debt racked up in just 8 months, mostly on clothing, spa treatments, and weekend trips I hadn't been invited on. I felt like I'd been living with a stranger, a parasite wearing my wife's face. The golden opportunity came when Sarah announced she'd been invited to an exclusive influencer retreat in Sedona. All expenses paid if she'd promote the resort. All I had to do was give her $1,500 for incidentals. I agreed immediately, surprising her with my enthusiasm for her career opportunity. "Really? You're not going to give me a hard time about this?" she asked suspiciously. "Not at all," I smiled. "Your brand is growing. This could be a great opportunity." She narrowed her eyes momentarily then broke into a wide smile. "Well, finally, you're starting to understand how this influencer thing works. Investments now lead to big returns later." The irony was almost too much to bear. The moment her flight took off, the real work began. I took a week off work, my first actual vacation in 3 years. Within 48 hours, with the help of Dave, Tyler, and 2 movers I paid cash for, I, 1, moved all my personal belongings to a storage unit, 2, cataloged and photographed every item in the house with receipts, 3, installed cameras with clear notification stickers, all legal, at the entrances, 4, changed the passwords on all our joint credit cards, 5, met with Kevin to explain my situation and secure his support for what was coming. "I had a feeling something wasn't right," Kevin said after I showed him some of the evidence. Lisa mentioned Sarah had been asking weird questions about our finances and my compensation package. Now I understand why. Most importantly, I had documentation from our bank showing Sarah had been transferring $750 to $1,200 a month to a private account for the past 18 months, money that came directly from my deposits since she hadn't contributed anything. According to my calculations, she'd siphoned off over $19,000 while claiming she needed more for household expenses. The day before Sarah was due back, Tyler filed the divorce papers. We also submitted an emergency petition based on financial fraud with a request to freeze all joint assets pending investigation. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, granted the petition within hours. I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a hotel and waited. Tyler had advised me to be nowhere near the house when she returned, both for legal reasons and personal safety. "People do crazy when cornered," he warned. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without anxiety dreams or waking up in a cold sweat about finances. It felt like I'd put down a 100-pound backpack I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Sarah's first call came at 8:47 p.m., shortly after her flight landed. "Kyle, why is there a notice on our door? And why isn't my key working? Check your email." I said calmly. What? I just got off a plane. What the hell is going on? Check your email. I hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded with calls, texts, and voicemails, each more hysterical than the last. I let them all go to voicemail. Tyler had been very clear. No direct communication except in writing through attorneys. From her increasingly unhinged messages, I pieced together what happened. She'd arrived home to find the locks changed. Legal, as I'd filed an emergency order and a formal notice of divorce proceedings taped to the door. When she checked her email, she found not only the divorce filing, but the temporary freeze on all our joint accounts, including the credit card she'd planned to use for a lift-in hotel. Some choice excerpts from her messages. You can't just lock me out of my own house. This is illegal. Answer your phone, you coward. Where am I supposed to go? All my things are in there. You're going to regret this. I've got friends who are lawyers too. This is financial abuse. I'm calling the police. At 11:23 p.m., she sent a text that just said, "You psychopath. You won't get away with this." I forwarded it to Tyler with the caption, "Exhibit of threatening behavior." The next morning, Dave called. "Dude, Sarah's on a rampage. She's calling everyone telling them you had a mental breakdown, cleaned out the accounts and abandoned her. She even called Kevin claiming you've been embezzling from the company to fund a gambling addiction." I laughed for what felt like the first time in years. Kevin already knows everything. He's the one who helped me document her side account. "She showed up at our place at midnight," Dave continued. "Megan didn't want to let her in, but she was crying in our driveway loud enough to wake the neighbors. She spent 2 hours talking about you, then asked to borrow $2,000 for a lawyer. Did you give it to her? Hell no. We offered her the couch for the night, but that's it. She left this morning, pissed that we wouldn't take her side." Similar reports came in from other friends and colleagues. Sarah was working overtime to paint herself as the victim of a sudden, inexplicable betrayal. She'd even called my parents, spinning a tale about how I'd changed recently, become controlling and paranoid, and suggesting I might need psychiatric help. Thankfully, I'd already briefed my parents on what was happening. My dad's response had been classic about damn time, son. That woman's been bleeding you dry for years. The real nuclear explosion happened 3 days later at the emergency hearing. Sarah showed up with a tiger of a divorce attorney, a woman known for bleeding husbands dry. They came prepared for war with statements about my controlling behavior, financial abuse, and abandonment. Sarah had clearly been coached. Gone were the designer clothes and excessive makeup. Instead, she wore a modest dress, minimal makeup, and had her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The perfect picture of a wronged wife. What they weren't prepared for was Tyler's methodical presentation. Bank records showing her secret account, time-stamped recordings of her disparaging our marriage, screenshots of her flirtatious exchanges with her ex, the email to Amber detailing her plan to divorce me after my promotion, affidavits from Kevin, Lisa, Dave, and Megan about her behavior, credit card statements, showing her lavish spending while unemployed, evidence that she'd consulted with 3 divorce attorneys while I was working late. The judge, who'd seemed neutral at first, removed her glasses halfway through Tyler's presentation. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said, looking directly at Sarah, "are you familiar with the term divorce planning? It's when someone secretly prepares to leave their spouse while continuing to benefit from the marriage and deliberately increasing their spouse's financial obligations." Sarah's attorney tried to interject, but the judge shut her down. "The court takes a very dim view of such behavior. Very dim indeed." Sarah tried to counter with tears and confusion. "I was just scared and exploring my options. I never actually intended to go through with any of it. Kyle has always been controlling with money and I needed to protect myself." The judge referred to specific exhibits. "Your text messages to your friend, Amber state, and I quote, 'Just 2 more years until his director promotion. Then I can file and take half of everything, plus monthly maintenance. His income should be close to $180,000 by then.' That doesn't sound like someone who never intended to go through with it." By the end of the hearing, the judge had maintained the freeze on all joint accounts, ordered Sarah to provide a full accounting of her separate account, granted me exclusive use of the house until the next hearing, and ordered Sarah to pay her own legal fees from her separate funds. As we left the courtroom, I finally looked directly at Sarah. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide her shock and fury. She tried to approach me, but Tyler stepped between us. "Save it for your affidavit," he said. In the hallway outside, she managed to catch up to me while Tyler was talking to the court clerk. "Kyle, this is insane," she hissed, eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. "You know most of that was taken out of context. We can still fix this if you call off the dogs now. The time for fixing things was before you started planning to drain me financially." I replied calmly. "Everything's in writing, Sarah. Your own words." Her expression changed, the mask of wounded innocence falling away to reveal the calculating woman I'd been living with. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. I made you. I can destroy you just as easily. I just smiled. You might want to be careful with the threats. This is still a courthouse. Her attorney pulled her away then, whispering urgently in her ear. The look Sarah gave me before they left was pure hatred. I should have been scared, but all I felt was relief. The prison doors were finally opening. News travels fast in social circles. Within days, two distinct narratives emerged. Sarah claimed I'd had some kind of breakdown, possibly related to job stress or maybe drugs, and had vindictively locked her out during a business trip. My evidence-backed version that she'd been planning to use me for a bigger divorce settlement while secretly connecting with an ex gained traction as more details leaked. The most surprising ally emerged in Amber, who apparently had her own regrets about enabling Sarah. She forwarded dozens of messages showing how Sarah had bragged about manipulating me, including gems like, "Kyle thinks that new Peloton was for both of us," as if I'd let him sweat all over. My bike, LOL, just told Kyle my car broke down and needed $900 for repairs. Hello? New Botox appointment. The secret is to make them think your spending benefits them somehow. I told Kyle these $300 sheets would improve our sex life. Guess which part of that sentence was a lie? Amber's conscience had apparently gotten the better of her after she saw Sarah's true colors. "I'm recently married myself," she explained when we met for coffee. "The way she talked about you, about marriage in general, started to really bother me. What if my husband had someone like Sarah whispering poison in his ear about me?" Her texts and emails provided additional evidence that Sarah had been systematically deceiving me for years. Not just about money, but about everything, including multiple girls' weekends that had actually been meetups with her ex, Jules. 2 weeks after the initial hearing, Sarah's attorney requested a settlement conference. Her tough facade had cracked when she realized 3 critical facts. 1. The prenup she'd insisted on protected my retirement accounts and my original down payment on the house, plus appreciation. 2. Her documented financial fraud and divorce planning had destroyed any chance of alimony. 3. Most of our joint assets were subject to division, but in light of her behavior, the judge was unlikely to split them 50-50. The settlement offer was almost insultingly low. She'd keep her separate account, now containing about $23,000, her car fully paid off by me and personal items. No alimony, no share of the house, no ongoing support of any kind. Tyler advised me it was actually generous given the circumstances. The judge could order her to repay the money she diverted plus your attorney's fees. This lets her walk away with something. I agreed to the terms with one addition. Sarah had to sign an NDA preventing her from disparaging me publicly, including on social media. Her brand would have to find content elsewhere. The divorce was finalized in record time. I sold the house at a $110,000 profit, bought a smaller place closer to work, and took a month off to finally recover from years of stress. The transformation was remarkable. Without Sarah's constant criticism and escalating demands, I started to remember who I was before the marriage. I took up old hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and even started dating casually. Nothing serious, just getting comfortable with myself again. I lost the stress weight, dropping 35 pounds in 6 months through regular exercise and not emotional eating my way through Sarah's latest crisis. I started therapy to understand why I'd allowed myself to be used for so long. Most importantly, I rebuilt my relationship with my family, visiting them without Sarah's orchestrated emergencies that always seemed to happen right before planned trips. "You look like yourself again," my mom said during my first visit home post-divorce. "We've missed this version of you." Fast forward 14 months. I'd been promoted to Director of Special Projects, $172,000 base plus up to a 30% bonus, lost the stress weight plus 15 more pounds, and started dating casually, mostly successful professional women who actually had their own money and ambitions. The company had sent me to our London office for a 6-month leadership exchange, which came with a generous housing allowance and travel budget. Sarah's wellness brand had apparently collapsed after several companies cut ties with her following a drunken Instagram live where she'd ranted about women settling for mediocre men. According to mutual connections, she had moved back to her parents' house in Ohio and was working as an assistant manager at a mall boutique. I had almost forgotten about her completely when the text came. "Kyle, I know it's been a while. I've been doing a lot of thinking and growing. I realize now how much I took for granted. Can we talk? Just for closure." I ignored it. 3 days later, another message. "I heard about your promotion in London assignment. I'm really happy for you. You always were destined for big things." Then, a week later, "My mom's been diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm really struggling right now and could use a friendly voice, please." Against my better judgment, I replied, "Sorry to hear about your mom. I hope she gets good treatment." That tiny response opened the floodgates. Sarah called within minutes. Against Tyler's explicit advice, I answered. "Kyle, thank you for picking up. God, it's good to hear your voice." She sounded exactly the same, That breathless excitement that once made me feel special but now just raised red flags. What do you need, Sarah? Need? Can't I just want to catch up with my ex-husband? She laughed nervously. But since you asked, I am in a bit of a situation. Of course she was. Her parents had apparently lost a significant amount of money in a bad investment. Her mother's cancer treatments weren't fully covered by insurance. The trust fund she'd been so eager to protect in our prenup was mostly gone, used to cover her parents' debts. She was making $16.50 an hour at the boutique with no benefits. Her car needed major repairs. I know we didn't end on good terms, she said, voice softening to the tone she'd used when asking for expensive gifts. But I always knew you were a good man, Kyle. The best man I've ever known, honestly. What exactly are you asking for, Sarah? She paused. Then, I need about $35,000 for my mom's treatments and to get back on my feet. I could pay you back once I get a better job, or we could discuss other arrangements. The audacity was almost impressive. Other arrangements? Her voice dropped to a suggestive whisper. I'm still technically in my prime and I know you always said I was the most beautiful woman you'd ever been with. We could reconnect. I could even move to London for a while, help you settle in like old times. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The woman who'd called our marriage a prison, who'd planned to divorce me for maximum profit, who'd mocked me to her friends and cheated our finances, was now proposing to essentially become my paid companion. Sarah, let me be very clear. There will be no money, no reconnecting, no arrangements. The only reason I even answered your call is because I'm in a good enough place now to not hate you anymore. I just feel nothing. But my mom, I'm sorry about your mom truly, but her medical bills are not my problem. You made very sure we were no longer family, remember? You should reach out to Jules in San Francisco. I hear he's killing it at a startup. She gasped. That was private. Nothing was private, Sarah. That's what you never understood. In a real partnership, there are no secrets, but we never had a real partnership, did we? You had a business arrangement with a walking ATM. I could hear her crying now. Probably real tears for once since her schemes weren't working. Kyle, please, I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to turn. Everyone else has abandoned me. For a brief moment, I felt a flicker of the old protective instinct. Then I remembered all those nights working late while she spent my money. All those times she'd belittled me to friends. The calculated plan to maximize what she could take. That's what happens when you treat people like resources to be exploited, Sarah. Eventually, the resources run out. I suggest you start building something real with whatever you have left. Her voice instantly transformed from pleading to venomous. After everything I put up with, the boring sex, the long hours, your pathetic need for validation, you owe me. I paid all my debts in full during the divorce, Sarah. Goodbye. I blocked her number and emailed Tyler to document the contact in case she tried anything else. 2 days later, Dave called. Dude, you won't believe this. Sarah's been calling everyone we know, asking for money or places to stay. She even contacted Kevin, claiming she had information about company improprieties that might interest him. What did Kevin say? He recorded the call and sent it to his attorney. Pretty sure that violates her NDA. She's looking at penalties if you want to pursue it. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to twist the knife to make her suffer financially the way I'd suffered emotionally. But the truth was, freedom from Sarah was worth more than any revenge. Tell Kevin I appreciate the heads up, but she's not worth the effort. I've got a life to live. And I did. A life that had become immeasurably better since walking away from someone who saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit. My new girlfriend, Elise, a pediatric surgeon I'd met at a charity event, had none of Sarah's entitlement or materialism. We were planning a hiking trip through Scotland during my next break from the London office. The irony of Sarah's situation wasn't lost on me. She'd spent years cultivating an image of success and fulfillment on social media, portraying our marriage as perfect when it suited her brand, and portraying me as the problem when talking to her friends. Now she was stuck in retail hell, living with her parents at 32, watching from afar as I thrived without her. My therapist suggested that Sarah's attempted reconnection wasn't really about money. It was about control. She couldn't stand that I'd escaped her influence and was doing well. Success is the best revenge. But her seeing that success and wanting back in was the sweetest revenge of all. That night, as Elise and I video chatted about our upcoming plans, I realized something profound. The prison had never been the marriage itself. The prison had been allowing someone to convince me I was worth nothing beyond what I could provide financially. By setting us both free, I discovered what actual freedom felt like. The freedom to be valued for who I was, not what I earned. The freedom to be with someone who saw partnership as something equal and supportive. The freedom of knowing my own worth. As for Sarah, last I heard, she'd started a GoFundMe for her mom's medical bills. It had raised $250 in 3 weeks, mostly from distant relatives. The page included a long sob story about being abandoned in her time of need by those who had promised to love her in sickness and health. Apparently, even in defeat, she couldn't stop trying to rewrite history, but that was no longer my problem. I'd escaped my prison sentence, and there was no looking back.